LA, Emily, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank
Thank you for having
you.
us.
Well, I'm very excited to talk to you. I'm a fan of multiple projects that you're both involved in, and obviously, I want to talk about record stuff, but I think also Miami has low key one of the most fascinating punk histories
Oh
in
yeah.
America. So I cannot wait
Yes.
to learn today. But this is because there's two of you. And
hmm
I don't want it to be, it's hard to decide who goes first. And so, unless you have a predetermined order of who should go first, I have picked in my head a number between 1 and 10, and I will write it down right now. So there's no cheating on my part. And will you both take a guess to see who goes
Okay.
first?
9.
Okay.
7.
Emily, it was 5. You were closest.
Oh.
Ooh.
Emily, how'd you get into punk? Do you remember the first time you ever came across the genre?
So I would have to say, and this is like, I don't know, a pretty maybe a cliche answer for someone my age, but Green Day. So seventh grade, and I remember very specifically. I grew up going to an Orthodox Jewish private school through sixth grade, so you can imagine I was not hearing much interesting music then. And then I went to public school, to Dade County Public School in Miami, and I met some kids in art class, and they were like, "Hey, you look kind of weird. We should hang out." And I went back to one of their houses one day, and they showed me Green Day, and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" Because it was very different. Yeah, that's like it's very salient in my mind. Like I can remember sitting in Sheila's bedroom listening to Green Day for the first time. So yeah,
I'm actually in a period of rediscovery with Green Day myself because my
same
youngest,
actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
and there's like so many records I missed because I was like one of those people that, oh, I can't listen to this. So now, American Idiot, I'm like, oh, there's some really good songs on this record.
Yeah. Yeah, I teach drums and now guitar to kids, and so many of them want to learn different periods of Green Day. So I've been getting back into it, and yeah, I mean they're just great.
It's weird to watch the ascent of this stuff to become like classic rock, which temporally makes sense, but it doesn't feel like Led Zeppelin would have as
No.
or something. And yeah, but and I guess maybe it's like TikTok or YouTube stories or one of those things, but it's fascinating how there's certain bands that hit kids, I guess in the same way a video or a song on the radio would have hit at a different time. And then
hmm
all the kids are just obsessed with, oh, Eminem or Nirvana or Green Day. Sometimes it's better than others, but
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like classic rock stations when I was younger, they weren't playing punk stuff from the 70s and 80s though. So it's interesting that now they're playing punk stuff from the 90s and early aughts and everything on classic rock stations. Like I heard Blink 182 on the classic rock station the other day at work, and I was like, "Whoa, they're playing Blink on classic rock." And then right after they played Deep Purple, it was really really weird.
yeah, it's weird how there's kind of like a lost period, I guess, of classic rock, which would be sort of that late 70s non-Eagles sounding stuff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like there's no classic rock radio station, or I was even thinking this for like early 90s indie rock. I'm like, oh, there'd be a great classic rock hole to fill with that
yeah.
somewhere.
Like you don't hear the Pixies on the classic rock station.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So, LA, how did you get into punk? Do you remember the first time you ever came across it?
So I went to Catholic school, so I was definitely not surrounded by that growing up. But then my mom put me in creative camp when I was like, I don't know, 8 or 9 or something. And I remember the first thing I ever heard that kind of like blew my mind was Offspring, The Offspring, and Green Day. And then a few years later, I bought a Sum 41 CD with my own money. And I think I just like, I don't know, maybe it blew my mind, but I was also kind of in this like, do I still like In Sync? but am I also into this like heavier stuff? And I started kind of navigating more towards the heavier sounding stuff. And, you know, a lot of my older cousins listened to the White Stripes and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, I think this is where I'm supposed to be, what I like. And then, yeah, fast forward to my teens and discovering Riot Girl. And that just completely changed my life.
But you do need those big on-ramp bands, like Emily said. There's like it's kind of a not a cliche answer, but it is. There's certain bands that are almost like these beacons that go up that draw kids in, and then yeah, kids can find Riot Girl, kids can find Power Violent or whatever their subsect's going to be. But you need that kind of like the most dreaded sellout, whatever. You need the band that kind of
The
like
gateway band.
exactly. You need the band that's going to go for it and get hated by punk to ascend, because otherwise you're not going to have kids finding out about it. Like unless you have a cool sibling, you're not going to hear about it.
Yeah, I was the oldest, so yeah, I remember trying to get my siblings into cooler stuff, and it didn't really work.
And I'm basically an only child, so
Yeah, like what are you going to do? Like if you don't have this access to it, you don't see it in places, or my opinion on this stuff has changed so much. I guess like also like my opinion on Sum 41 at the time, being in Toronto, watching it happen, I was like, I'm not in this. But then watching my kids listen to it, I'm like, oh yeah, once again, they've got some songs. Like they definitely were doing something really cool. And weirdly, when you look at it, as I guess commercial as it seemed sonically at the time, not a very commercial band, Sum 41.
No.
yeah, no, they had some songs that were a little intense, like for commercial. Something about my mom should have had an abortion, like type stuff.
Yeah, they definitely like were and same with the Offspring. They didn't look like bands that you would see on TV. Like they didn't look like
Yeah,
Backstreet Boys or
Right.
right.
NSYNC or even Green Day.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they were a little rough around the edges.
A little bit, like Offspring, especially with the Bo Derek hair and everything. It's like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
a million to one shot. That
Iconic. Yeah.
So where'd you both kind of like? When did you eventually meet and start going to shows? Or was it when you started going to shows? You meet?
Yeah, I mean, Emily has,
I'm a little older,
yeah.
and we didn't end up meeting until I moved back to Miami after being in Portland, Oregon for a while, and we both ended up playing in an event organized by Tom Tom Magazine at the Perez Art Museum, Miami. It was like a drummer thing, and we had like kind of seen each other at shows before, but I guess we really like connected then, and that must have been like what
I
12 years ago, 11 years ago.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's been yeah. And then I shortly after I started working at Sweat Records, which is where Emily was at. And yeah, that's pretty much where it all started.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the this version of the band started there too, because it happened like standing there at the counter and someone asking Ale to play solo opening up for Shonen Knife, and she was like, "Nah, dog, I need a band."
That's
So
awesome. So did you
yeah.
both grow up kind of in musical households? Like, did your parents play or?
Not really. My mom like really only listened to like Barbara Streisand, like really only Barbara Streisand. It was a lot. Although Evergreen is a jam, I will go on the record to say that Evergreen is such a great song. But and my stepdad, who mainly raised me, he listened to a lot of like fusion and prog rock and that kind of stuff, which is cool. You know, as a kid, it's like, whoa, this is like a weird puzzle. How are they doing that? But that's not the stuff that I really loved. You know?
Yeah, I mean, my mom, she loves the Beatles, and I grew up listening to that. And my dad is like, he's Argentinian, so he would just play a lot of kind of Beatle-esque bands, but from Argentina in the house, and mostly a lot of like Argentine folk music. He sings. My dad, he's a great singer, but was always kind of too shy to sing in front of other people. And yeah, my mom, no, I think she tried learning how to play guitar many, many, many years ago, and it just didn't work out. But my uncle, so my mom's brother, he was the touring bassist for Warren Zevon in like the late 70s or 80s, I think.
That is sick.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I didn't know until he passed away. Like I found out that I mean, I knew he was a musician, but I didn't know to what extent. And yeah, he was his touring bassist, and he was also Glenn Frey's touring bassist for a minute. And
It all comes back to the Eagles.
it all comes back to the Eagles.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, his son, my cousin Louis, was also the musical one. So I think from like his influence, I kind of started going, towards that and like wanting to learn and play music more. But yeah, like I said, I'm pretty much an only child, so I just had my parents around me the whole time, and they're not really musical folks.
We heard a lot of Warren Zevon around my house growing up. Like my dad is a huge fan, so that's awesome. And I'm sorry for your loss too, but he must have had unbelievable stories because you hear a lot of weird stories about Warren Zevon, and certainly I could only imagine what touring with him in the '70s would have been like.
I know. I wish I would have been able to ask him. But the live album, I think it's called what is it? Stand by My Fire, Stand
Yeah,
something
something
like
like
that.
that. Yeah.
My uncle is on the cover of that
Oh, that's awesome.
with him. Yeah.
That's amazing. So, Emily, what was the show scene like in Miami when you started going to shows?
So I slowly started going to shows in like the mid '90s, and that was mainly a lot of smaller things that people would do in their house or in their yard. Lots of backyard shows down here. The ska punk scene was very big here in the mid '90s. It was never something I loved, but like a lot of the kids that I hung out with or around were super super into it. Like I remember there was a point where like everyone had a fucking Against All Authority shirt, and that's back when like AAA was like ska punk. And like that and this other band Milkshed. It's just like everyone had like the AAA shirt, the Milkshed shirt. They'd be doing shows in people's yards. There was a really cool all ages spot back in the day called Cheers, and they would have a lot of just really great punk shows, and it was cool because you could just go, and it was like your friends playing. They weren't like bringing people in from out of town really, or if they were, it was like from Orlando or whatever. So just lots of that, but yeah, lots of DIY, lots of DIY down here, and there were some venues like up in Fort Lauderdale. Like I remember, my stepdad would drive me and my friends to go up there. I saw Elastica at the Edge in Fort Lauderdale, and that like blew my fucking mind. It was like one of the best nights ever. I was like 14, and I was like, oh my god, I'm seeing Elastica. But yeah, super 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 DIY. There's also the spot Churchill's, which is a very very storied place. You've probably heard about it.
I played there. It's a legendary place to get to play. Yeah, because it's the CBGBs of the deep, deep South.
Yeah, but so much more. Like it just, there was so much more going on there than at CBGB's. I'd be willing to venture. And yeah, so Churchill's was around. I didn't start going to Churchill's until like a little bit later, like more when I was like 17, 18. But yeah, everything fucking happened at Churchill's. RIP. So
Alaska's one of my favorites too. What was that show
same.
like?
It was amazing. It was amazing. It was like I still have the ticket stub. I actually it's funny, I have it in this box of all of these important things to me. I have like jewelry from my grandparents and my dad and stuff, and in there is my Elastica ticket stub from that show because that was just such a huge thing for me. That band was so big for me. It still is. Like that first record still rips. Like it holds up. The songs are so great. I remember Justine was wearing a Heather Gray Mickey Mouse t-shirt, and I was like, oh my God, she's so fucking cool. So yeah, that was just, yeah, amazing for me.
Was that on the first record or the second record? Did they tour
That
on the
was on the
second
first
record?
record. I don't know if they toured on the second record. The second record is like a hotly contested topic.
I love it. I think that record's super
No,
underrated.
I think it's good too, but no, this was on the first record. Like I
Okay.
saw them on tour for the first record. It's
Yeah.
like I don't think I even understood like what I was seeing. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I love this band, great, yeah, whatever. But they became like iconic, you know? And yeah.
How much interconnectedness was there between the different, obviously Florida is a big state, but I mean like the different scenes within Florida. Like obviously Fort Lauderdale and Miami are geographically pretty close, but like let's say at Gainesville and Miami.
Yeah, I think they're pretty close. I mean, when I first started, playing in bands and kind of touring more around Florida, like everyone knows everyone, basically. Like everyone's friends, and it's usually Miami, Orlando, Tampa, or St. Pete, Gainesville, Tallahassee, Jacksonville, St. Augustine. Those are like the main, and even Melbourne too. Melbourne has a pretty
There's lots of little
great
in
scene.
between places,
Yeah.
like the whole like Fort Myers, Cape Coral, like
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's like a lot of I don't know, like everyone, it just kind of gets along with everyone, and if you know one person in one city, then that kind of already connects you to a million other people, which is awesome.
Yeah, 'cause it's interesting. It wasn't until I started record collecting that I really, got the breadth of how deep Florida punk goes. Like the Failure Face, and as you said, Against All Authority, and Assa. There weren't bands that got out and toured, but barring the No Idea stuff and the explosion that kind of causes, like a lot of that earlier history is really, I don't know, not really talked about for how many great records came out of the
a
state.
lot of these bands never left Florida. A lot of
Yeah.
them like only toured within Florida, which is crazy, and made iconic records.
Yeah, I mean, the first band that I think of, at least for Miami, is like Screaming Sneakers.
Screaming Sneakers, yeah.
They're such a
Big
great
one.
band, and I think, made that one EP and like called it or something. It's a shame because they're such an amazing band, and more people need to know about them and other bands like them that played around too.
Someone reissued that a few years back, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Someone did a reissue of that, and I remember getting in touch with them because I wanted to buy copies for the store, but they never got back to me.
A punk store in Miami not able to sell the Screaming Sneakers? That's a travesty.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. I mean, no, I'm not talking shit about them, I can't even remember the label, but yeah, I was like, yo, I want to buy like a bunch of copies of this. But, maybe they were sold out. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like the Eat, and there's that
Oh,
whole
yes.
that
I mean,
morbid opera.
Yes.
Like there's just sewer zombies. Like
morbid opera. Yeah.
that with in KLM Records, is it called? I think, or something. KM with they did like Maggot Sandwich, Stevie Stiletto Records. They were like, it's like 3 letters. I can't believe I'm blanking on this now.
It's okay. I
Anyway,
can't think of
but
it.
a really cool label that put out like a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
I'll edit this part out, but
The fuck?
That's a crazy story.
it
That's
was
a
the
great
weirdest story.
story.
But when you said Screaming Sneakers, I'm like, fuck, I gotta tell the story. It's gonna take for fucking ever, but I gotta
okay.
tell.
No, I love it. Thank you for sharing
I'm
that.
glad we got to hear it. I'm gonna tell that to a couple people who know Screaming Sneakers. They'll appreciate it.
But yeah, like there's just something about those records from Florida, and I think it's people always talk about this in Seattle, like, oh, there's isolation, like no one came to Seattle, but it was pretty much right beside Vancouver. Vancouver bands were coming down. There's, it's not too far from LA, Portland,
Right.
obviously, but Miami really does feel cut off at various times in punk. Like I know bands went down, but especially South Florida, where
Yeah. It's like an island almost, because in order to get there, if you're coming from the West Coast, it'll take you 9 hours. If you're coming from the East Coast, it'll take you about 5 or 6 roughly. So if you're touring, you have to have at least 2 or 3 shows in Florida in order to go in and out from Miami.
Yeah.
We've noticed a lot of people have either been starting or ending their tours in Miami, and then will just fly back home. And I've noticed in recent years that more and more bands have been doing that, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing that. Like, we're like flying to other places from Miami
Yeah.
and just doing the tour out there. Because, touring out of Miami is such a fucking pain in the ass.
It is a pain in the ass. Yeah. But I mean, I think in recent years, though, like a lot more bands have been making the trek down here because I don't know, maybe they're finding out that we actually have a decent funk scene down here that's, worth checking out and like playing for. So that I think it's great, more bands in Miami.
Yeah, like like I guess Torch. There are bands that get out and kind of like sort of send up the signal flare at different times. Cult Ritual and Neon Blood and that kind of whole scene as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
But and then it just feels like every couple of years, like Florida explodes and everyone's like, oh yeah, there's this place with this amazing scene, and then I guess it retreats back and bubbles up again, and then explodes again for people, and it's yeah,
Yeah.
It's like this, it's like a roller coaster.
because I didn't know, and I'm gonna look this up. Testacora. I had no idea
Soccer.
about
Oh, to Sakura.
Testacora. Sorry. That band's fucking amazing.
Oh, thank you.
It
Thank
is
you.
that I only heard the one song because I think your Bandcamp has been taken down now. But
Yeah.
that one song, "Sick," is awesome.
There, if you look up on SoundCloud to Sakura,
Okay,
all the stuff is there. But I think someone else was running the Bandcamp that I guess later just deleted everything. Yeah, that's not there anymore, but I uploaded everything on SoundCloud. So it's there, and on YouTube you'll find stuff too. But yeah, I honestly had so much fun playing in that band because I was playing drums, which is not something I typically do, but yeah, I fucking loved playing that in that band. It was so much fun.
there's like a real history and a lot of great bands and doing kind of sludgier stuff
Oh
coming out of
yeah.
Oh
Florida.
yeah. In South Florida for sure.
Yeah.
That's what it's in our DNA, basically.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of interviews and stuff around this new record that we put out and talking about that quite a bit because it is a big influence on us and on so many other things, and it really does seem like it's like that. Like it's just of this place. Something about the geography and the weather and everything is just like sludgy.
Yeah, I mean, you have Cavity, Torch, Floor, Holly Hunt, Devalued, like
So much.
all these heavy ass bands that come from down here, and it's just we love it.
It's almost like it. I guess maybe it's the humidity. Like, 'cause you see it in New Orleans, obviously, with bands coming out of there, like 13, I Ain't
Yeah,
God and
That's
stuff.
true.
Yeah, hey God.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. The stickiness and the sweatiness of the humidity is what makes the sludginess extra gritty.
Yeah, because it seems like it would be very different types of drugs being consumed
Yeah.
from the people I know in the various scenes, and a little bit, So it's probably like the weather more than the chemical influence.
Oh, for
Yeah, yeah.
sure.
I mean, I say a lot, like when we play down here, especially in the times that we play outdoors, which happens more often than it should probably. I feel like I'm playing in like quicksand sometimes, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So it's just sort of like I feel like some bands just embrace that, and it's like this is gonna be slow because my body does not want to move through this. So
It's also cool, and I think I don't know. Actually, I'm intrigued to hear what you think it is, but like I find in places where there's not necessarily that defined path for success for a band to do, like I'm going to become a famous person in a famous band. The music develops in a different way, like because there's not a commercial path, so people kind of make anti-commercial music or feel free to make more anti-commercial music. It seems.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, and that's very indicative of a healthy just DIY scene in general, right? Where you can kind of do whatever the fuck you want and the people around you are helping support it, and there's a, small but very, very inclusive scene. Yeah, I don't think many people, even some of the people who ended up kind of getting bigger or getting out there, approached it like that, like thinking that there was a clear path toward being successful. So,
Yeah, because I was trying to think. Well, the Iron and Wine, I guess, is
yeah.
from Florida as well. But like in terms of bands that kind of like made like huge commercial splashes out of punk or indie, it's not. It's always just been, it's about making a great band, less than making like the next Nirvana or the
Right.
next
Yeah.
whatever, Blink-182.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I've talked to people from Miami, there's like a real history of violence, well, no reference to the movie, but like to the punk scene there. Like it seems like in the early 80s or in the mid 80s or late 80s, there's a huge skinhead scene. And
Yeah.
granted, most of them were anti-fascist, but certainly most were still super violent, from what I've heard.
Mhm.
And it seems like that's it's it constantly comes up when I talk to people from Miami in the late that were around in the late '80s. Was that still around, Emily, when you were going to shows kind of by the mid '90s?
I didn't really experience much of that, but I was a lot of the stuff I was going to definitely was like a much younger crowd, and there were a lot more female identified folks hanging out and doing stuff. So I didn't really see much of that. I mean, I remember hanging out with a few guys who were pretty intense, but I never encountered like anything specifically violent or fucked up, in a space that made me feel, uncomfortable. Yeah.
On the record collecting front, a band from that era, have you ever seen the FWA LP show up?
Mm-mm.
No,
Gotta be one of the
no.
most obscure American hardcore records. I had like no idea that this thing even existed, and then my friend who's from Miami, MVP, this wrestler, was telling me when he was in prison, he met the guitar player from Foix in the rec room, and he had seen them open for Agnostic Front maybe when they played Churchill's or they
What?
played some shows, and then I found the record on Discogs. It's one of those like several $100
Yeah.
type,
Yeah.
never been sold type records.
Wow. Really
But
interesting.
yeah, very bizarre. And there's footage of them, I think, playing at Churchill's on YouTube that I've seen. But again, like you're saying, these bands never got out, so it's not like there's sort of any record of this band outside of the people that would have seen it live.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And it's a shame, dude, because like there are just so many bands. Like we could literally write you a list.
We made recently a
Yeah.
playlist. I mean, not of like stuff throughout history. It was like
Just
for the past 10 years that Churchill's existed.
yeah.
And like even on that, it's just like, fuck, I forgot. This band was
Extensive.
so awesome. And they made one tape and
Yeah.
they were so good, like that. There's dozens, if not hundreds of those from South Florida.
Yeah, you really get to see the geographical privilege, or and not necessarily always privilege in certain cases, but well, yeah, it's privilege in a lot of cases, but certainly the geographical effects on different scenes when you look at the history of specifically punk music, but across America, like just how in New York or Los Angeles there were different opportunities for a band versus a band that would be in Miami or Madison, Wisconsin, and it's just like a different thing you got to carve out that
Hmm.
way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
When when you guys toured Mexico, what was that experience like? Because I went down and shot a thing there years ago. So I was in Mexico City for a month, and then I was in TJ for about 3 weeks and talked to people about the feasibility of touring, and people were like, "It's really hard to tour
We've
Mexico."
we've done it 3 times.
Yeah,
We've done 3 tours
but
in
we've
Mexico.
been, I will say though, we've been very privileged. I think like not what happened to us on our first tour is not something that happens to a lot of people's first tours or even second tours in Mexico.
This is true.
Like I don't know how or why it happened, but when we played and toured for the first time in Mexico, we got a really, really positive response. We sold out both shows that we played in Mexico City and in Guadalajara. And I mean, we honestly didn't have any time to spend just relaxing.
No,
We were just
nonstop.
doing live sessions,
We recorded like 6
interviews.
live
We did
sessions
six
while we were
live
there.
sessions.
Some of them never even got released.
We didn't sleep.
Yeah.
Like we have a journal that Emily was keeping the whole time, and basically we were going to sleep at 3 a.m., waking up at 7 a.m., and then just not stopping until 3 a.m. again. And it was amazing.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining, but we worked so, so hard on that tour. And it paid off, honestly. Like, I would say aside from, Miami, obviously, because we're from here, Mexico City is probably like where, according to, Spotify and the stats or whatever, where we have the most listens and our fans, people love us there and we love them.
And now we have done the tour 3 times.
Yeah.
So yeah, people are more familiar with us than ever over there.
What are the logistics of touring like? Are you flying from city to city, or
No, so here's the thing, like when you're in Mexico City, you can pretty much go in any direction and play in a smaller little city around it. And those shows will be sometimes okay, sometimes they'll be great. But then let's say if you want to go to Guadalajara, you're gonna drive there, but you'll end up paying about $50 in tolls.
Yeah, and it theoretically is supposed to take 6 hours, but then more realistically, it's between 8 and 10, depending on the traffic and the stops. So
And how much you're stopping,
you're
yeah.
exhausted by the time you get there.
Yeah. And like gas is expensive. Things aren't that cheap, but if you get a good show with a good guarantee in Guadalajara, it's honestly worth it. It's a great city to play in, and
People buy merch.
Yeah.
People definitely buy merch out there. So that's always good.
I love the history too of punk. I guess only really know TJ in Mexico City, but like, do you know the Dangerous Rhythms from? Oh my God, they're fucking awesome. Like '79, I think they put out their first single. They're still going. This is where that terrible pronunciation comes into play that I was talking about. What, Ritmos Peligros?
oh,
Yeah,
Ritmos
no,
Peligrosos.
Yeah, that's what they're now. I guess the name's now called. But originally they
Okay.
put out the records under Dangerous Rhythms.
Okay. It's the same thing, but in
Yeah.
Spanish.
But it's so, and now it's kind of the sound has evolved, but those first records are just like awesome, just great punk stuff. My band covered one of their songs last year, and
Nice.
I love that band. And like that's the great thing about when you get to tour is you get this sort of like immersive experience where you get to talk to people that are actually from the place. You're not really it's like an elevated tourism that what you're doing, but like you're saying, you don't get to see shit. You don't get to experience anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
The second time we went, we carved out time to do some touristy shit,
Yeah.
which was cool. And then this last time, a little bit, we went to the Frida Kahlo house like this third time. Like we had wanted to go every time and finally made it this last time.
Yeah. But it's cool though that how kind of like how the Florida scenes are interconnected. Once you go to Mexico and like you meet one person, then you meet all these other people that know everyone and like you just form bonds there and it's really cool. There's a lot of awesome punk bands from there and there's this radio show La Bestia that is kind of, trying to make a space for bands to come in and play. They do shows in their offices. They have a radio show. They have the rehearsal space. They have a recording studio, a record. So like they're great. La Bestia is awesome. And I know Alice Bag goes there often and
we
like
met,
lives there.
We met and got to play on a bill with Alice Bag.
Yeah.
Like the second time we toured.
And Allison Wolf.
And I'm with Allison Wolf, and it was just random. It was like a couple days before the tour, right? Like
It was the day before
the day
the
before,
tour.
Allison
Yeah.
hit us up like, "Yo, do y'all want to jump on this bill? Like Alice is playing, I'm playing," and we were like, "Oh, okay." So that was like the coolest fucking thing. And then they came to see our show like a week later in Mexico City, and it was just fucking crazy. It's like, what the hell? Like Alice Bag is here, like watching us play. Like what?
They're both so fucking rad. I love both
my
of
God.
them.
They're so sweet. They're
at-
awesome.
at, like heroes. And it's funny because like I think, especially with Alice, like I feel like the punk scene that she kind of was obviously helped form, but then like around as it progressed, like I kind of got the vibe, and you could see that from her involvement at different times that she was like, this is not it. And to see the punk scene that's kind of emerged now and her connection, deep connection with it, you're like, oh, this is the scene that she was trying to build, and this is the
Yeah.
scene she was waiting for. And oh yeah, Bags are one of the greatest bands of all time. Like,
Yep.
Yeah, dude.
Definitely.
For
And
sure.
she's such a sweetheart. She's so supportive. She's so intelligent. Like I just, everything she writes and says is just fucking great. So
did you go to Arena Mexico by chance when you were there? Where the Lucha Libre, the wrestling?
No.
Didn't Alu go?
Alu, our bassist that went on that tour with us, they were able to go and watch the wrestling. We didn't get to, but they said it was awesome.
maybe next time. That'll be a goal for next time.
It's a completely like unique, unbelievable experience, especially Arena Mexico, where it's like Like talk about, a storied venue for anything, but that for wrestling, that place has been running shows every week for years, right? And so it's just you can feel the history in there. And I'm obviously a wrestling fan, but I think even as a non-wrestling fan, it's worth the trip to go to it. But
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go. It just hasn't worked out.
Next time we're programming it in.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
that's what you kind of have to do on tours. Like you have to, try and make time for it. Have you
Yeah.
done any more touring kind of into South America at all?
Not yet.
No, we've been wanting to.
Hopefully next year.
Yeah, hopefully next year. We just haven't figured out the logistics for it. But we do have a lot of friends in Argentina that we could play with that could help us out. We really want to try and play in Colombia, in Chile, Peru. Like that would be so sick. Even in Brazil, we have a lot of friends in Brazil that we'd be able to play with. But yeah, next year, hopefully.
Yeah, what's that? Los Villadorias, the Argentinian punk band. Oh my God, that's terrible. I'm not
Violadores?
Yes,
Los
that's it.
Violadores?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the great. That first LP is just unreal.
I think one of them lives here in Miami, and I got to DJ records on a night that he was doing a solo performance at this it's not a biker bar.
It's a motorcycle and muscle vehicle showroom that also happens to have shows.
Right. So he was performing there and I was playing records, and it was so funny and just very random that I did not think that he lived in Miami, but yeah, there's a lot of Argentinians here.
That's awesome. What was he playing? Like kind of acoustically, or did he have a band with him?
No, he had a full backing band and everything, but he was playing more like blues rock stuff, like classic blues rock.
That venue's kind of big on that too.
Yeah,
Like, they like to book a lot of blues.
Listen,
stuff.
Argentinians are huge on that shit.
I'm not talking shit. Okay?
They
I'm just
love
saying.
blues rock
Yeah,
over there.
It's like choripan and blues rock at this venue.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, if you got muscle cars and motorcycles, there's a certain sound you got to find for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always bring my classic rock records when I play
Yeah,
there.
the times we've DJ'd, it's been like, let's be a little bit less weird. So I threw the last time though, I threw on like a Dogface Herman's track, and I'm like, okay, this might be jarring for some people, but let's see.
I think you can go as far as Man's Ruin catalog, right? That's probably safe.
Yeah.
You can bust out Caius Records, and yeah, that's got to be one of the most unique places to have shows. Like, do they have punk shows there, or is it exclusively blues rock?
No, I mean they've had like other types of I would say like jazzy performances.
Jazzy stuff. There's like a big kind of future jazz, like jammy jazz scene here.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of those bands.
But I think they've had like Creature Cage has played there, and they're more garagey,
Yeah, they're
punk
garagey.
bands.
Yeah.
So I think they're trying to make more shows happen there.
I don't think they want to get too weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'll get loud.
I guess the downside is that the parking sucks, which is why
The
people.
irony.
I mean, it's funny. It's basically in a converted garage, right? And
There's no parking.
That's awesome. It's kind of hard too as we're talking about keeping it not weird with Miami music. And a lot of unique music coming out there. Thurston Moore did your latest single, right? Like a Static Piece.
Yeah, the
7
7-inch. Yeah.
He's from Miami, right? Or his dad's from Miami? He's got a Miami connection.
He was born in Coral Gables.
Yeah, and he spent some of his younger time here. Apparently he bought his first Stooges record like on Miami Beach. That's like how the story goes.
I think it's in the book. Yeah, I think he tells that story in his book that came out too.
Yeah.
Did you guys meet him in Miami, or is that just through kind of touring
we met him
connections?
at the record store.
Well, no, the first time I met him was Rat Bastard was doing a Squelchers set, and he asked me to play drums and asked our friend Autumn to play, I think, bass, and didn't say who else was going to play with us, just said, come on the stage when it's time to play. And I go and I sit behind the drum set. And as I'm like sitting there, Thurston just starts walking up to the stage, getting on the stage, and starts like, tuning or whatever. And I was just
he
like,
doesn't tune.
whatever, doing whatever it is that he was fiddling on the guitar. I was like, holy shit, Thurston Moore's on the stage right now, and I'm about to play a show with him, sort of. It was, noise, but still, I was definitely stoked and kind of shocked. And after the show, I went up to Rat. I was like, what the fuck, man? Why didn't you say anything?
That's
He's like,
what he does.
He's like, I couldn't tell you, you would have like lost your shit.
Yeah. He had, before that, Thurston had played at the record store, and it was him with Steve Bristol and Kenny Millions. And if you don't know about Kenny Millions, look up Kenny Millions. That's just something to delve into that could occupy a lot of your time.
I'm writing this down.
Look him up. He's done so much stuff, and he was doing shit like in Russia and Japan. He played or was affiliated at some point with Coltrane, but basically short version, about 13, 14 years ago, he was like, fuck all this shit. And he started doing all these crazy noise performances, like squelching on sax and like these like toy like electric guitars showing porn in the background and like destroying things, and he'd be in a diaper, but like it was this legendary free jazz saxophone player that some people were like, wait, that's that guy. It's really interesting. There's a million videos on YouTube. I'm sure there's definitely a video of me playing with him one night where like someone went through the wall, like in the record store.
We played with him once, opening for I Hate God, right?
Oh, did we? I don't know. I don't even.
No, I'm sorry, not I Hate God. Fuck, Godflesh.
Well, we
many
played,
God bands.
That's even weirder.
We did Squelchers opening for Godflesh.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, but was Kenny?
Kenny was there.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Kenny was there with his blow up doll.
The blow up doll for a while, and he'd make the blow up doll like play the guitar and play sax. It's so. I'm telling you, there's a lot of videos online of that. But
there's that other side, I guess, like not to gender it, but I guess you could call it like Floridamancore. Like true freak stuff out of Florida.
Lots
like
of freaks.
Stevie. Have you seen that Stevie Stiletto documentary that came out about Stevie Stiletto?
No, I haven't
It's
seen
wild. Like I did no idea. Like I had one record by him. I had no idea he had been putting out that many records and had this sort of like run of like being like Florida's Johnny Thunders meets G.G. Allen Light kind of vibes a little bit. Like it's very weird. But yeah, there are, and I guess a terrible person, but like Marilyn Manson too, which I think Rat Bastard might have even done something on a Marilyn Manson early.
The first Marilyn
show.
Manson show was at Churchill's.
Yeah. Rat still talks about it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's I was never a fan of Marilyn Manson, but I've always had this weird like true crime-esque fascination with the thing.
Yeah.
And it was early on, it was like there's a zine in Toronto that someone did right away that was leaning in super hard to like the child molester, sex offender Marilyn Manson vibe, and includes candy for kids and a piece of candy stuck to the cover. And
I bought that first. So there used to be, Yesterday and Today Records is a record store that's been around forever down here, but they used to have multiple locations. And there was one near my house in South Miami growing up. And I remember walking there and buying the Portrait of an American Family CD. And I was young. Like they technically weren't supposed to sell me that, but they're awesome. And they sold me that. And like hiding it from my parents because like that shit was fucked up,
very fucked up.
Yeah.
There was a band from Toronto that went on a very early tour with them and had a version of that CD that had interviews with victims of sexual violence in between the songs. Like it got changed, the later version of it, but it was like a major label. Like someone submitted a major label to put that out even. Like it's fucking
crazy. I might still have that copy in my storage somewhere of the one I bought. And it was like, yeah, I just remember being like, this is fucking weird. But I was into it at that age. And I remember I went to the Antichrist Superstar tour. I remember going to that like with my high school girlfriend in like 9th grade and being like, this is fucked up. Like it was like, it was crazy. It seemed like some fucking fascist rally, It was that like level of intensity.
Yeah,
Damn.
it's weird to like look back on that as being like a mainstream moment in music where all this, like you're saying, the fascist imagery, the
Yeah.
it's like on mainstream TV, like kids are buying it, and it's spread like so quickly. It spread around the world.
Came from good old Florida.
There's no punk connection to that other than Rat Bastard with any of that stuff, right?
No, like Churchill's and whatever,
Churchill's.
but I can't remember the guy's name. There was someone who played in the early band who ended up not being in the, later iterations of the band when they kind of blew up. I can't recall his name, but apparently like he was like, yeah, fuck this, and went and did a bunch of other stuff with other bands because he was not feeling it.
Yeah, he knew what was up.
Yeah, he's like, this is bad news.
Was that completely removed from the punk scene there? Like, did it bleed over at all? Because like it's interesting when you talk to people from like Bakersfield, California, of a certain age, how they kind of claim Korn as almost like a hardcore band there or a punk band there, but only in Bakersfield. Is that acceptable?
Right. I don't think anyone claims Marilyn Manson, or even before he was like super, super fucked up. I don't think anyone was
Yeah.
like Marilyn Manson is like Miami. I mean, he's from Stewart.
Yeah, he's from up there.
Okay.
We don't claim
Is
him.
like the middle, like the most exciting thing in Stewart is there's like a Flanagan's. So yeah, it's
Yeah, we don't.
no, we don't claim
Nothing
him.
to do with us.
No, I didn't want to pin that on Miami, but I was just.
No.
We would claim Limp Bizkit over, over Marilyn Manson any day.
Is that Florida too?
Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
I hear I skipped over all the worst mainstream acts that came into Florida. I'm like, Iron to One.
We'll claim Morbid Angel all day though.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Tampa. But
And actually, there's a deep Toronto, Florida metal connection because Chuck from Death moved to Toronto for a while and did a bunch of recordings with the band Slaughter up here, Canadian
Okay.
Slaughter.
Yeah.
But he couldn't take the winters and had to move back to Florida.
Oh,
yeah.
It's a little harsh. That's why that affects the music in Canada. I guess the temporal weather's up here being freezing.
it's brutal.
I got to ask about him because I've had some interactions with him, and I know obviously you played with him, and I know he supported the store and come into the store, and I think you guys did a shirt for him years ago. Iggy Pop.
Oh yeah, the fundraiser shirt.
Yeah.
Technically, Iggy Pop bought the AC unit for the record store by letting. There was an image of him on the mural, or there still is an image of him on the mural done by CP1. And he let the store print T-shirts of it and sold them, and all that money raised went to buy an AC unit because Sweat did not have an AC unit when they first moved into that space next door to Churchill's. So that was all T.O. Iggy doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just honestly such a sweet and supportive person. He would come in on record store days just to like come and hang out and take pictures with people. And he saw one of my other bands performing one year on record store day, and then that's when I met him for the first time ever, and that was insane. He like saw me play and was I got a text from Lolo, the owner of Sweat, and she was like, "Where are you? Iggy wants to meet you right now." And I was like, "What? Iggy wants to meet me? What did I do?"
We played with them the day after the Stooges had all their gear ripped off in Montreal, in Toronto, and it was the greatest show. One of the greatest shows I've ever seen in my fucking life. Like it was just, and he was head first stage dives into the seats, like just
Yeah.
brutalizing himself.
The picture I have on my phone of Iggy is just his ass like in my face pretty much from when we played with him, because he wasn't even on stage for like 3 minutes,
And he took everything off.
Everything came off, and it's like you see his ass, and in the frame it's like I would have been there, and then you see his manager laughing, like cracking up, and that's just like, in the favorites on my phone, oh yeah, here's Iggy, and it's just his ass.
Yeah, he's honestly, for his age, I hope that I can be that energetic when I'm 76.
I'm not that energetic now.
Yeah,
Shit.
I can't barely like jog without getting tired. I don't know how he does it.
And it's wild because you know, have you ever seen 1991, the year punk broke, the Sonic Youth Nirvana thing, where he's like supporting Nirvana like super early on. Like he just seems like a guy who's always, not always, I guess, but like kind of been around bands and
Yeah.
supported bands and
I was saying
yeah.
he wrote the hype sticker like for our new album. Like he's awesome.
Yeah,
Like
he always has his finger on the pulse and is just always rooting for new bands and always playing new songs on his radio show. And he actually listens to a lot of, like, he listens to everything, man. Like,
yeah. He listens
he's
to hip hop, he listens to punk,
cumbia.
cumbia,
He
yeah.
loves it all. I think he is really just an, appreciates music, just period. And just wants to support as much as he can, which I think is great.
Yeah, I'm batting 500 in my interactions with Iggy. I had two incredible ones, and then two where I'm like, maybe, maybe I'll keep my distance a little bit. But then hearing him through his radio show, listening to him on his radio show and the way he interacts with music, I feel like I've gotten to know that side of him a lot more, and just like meeting or not meeting him, but like listening to him talk about music outside of a show context or backstage show context, and like you're saying, how he engages with all of it. Like you hear him do these, like when he played my band on there and he talked about us and the way he talked about us, like I'm choking up hearing it. I'm like, this is fucking Iggy Pop. That's fucking
Yeah.
crazy.
I have like another project that I do that's basically it's like field recordings, manipulations, ambient stuff. And he played us once on the show and he's like talking about it and he's like using it as a backdrop and I was like, whoa, this is so cool. It's like I sound designed the intro for the Iggy Pop BBC show tonight. It was so cool. It was like out of nowhere too. I was like, wow. Like definitely, yeah, he's listening to everything.
Yeah, and to have like there's no currency in it for him. Like it's not like like there's so many people that you can tell why they do certain things. You're like, oh, because this benefits you in some way. But with him, it's like, oh, this is a genuine, I like this, I want to expose people to it kind of vibe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What's it like being up there playing? Well, obviously the nudity aside, but being up there playing with that guy because he just seems like two different people completely off stage and on stage.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, he is. He's honestly so, like, when we're rehearsing with him, he's just very calm and doesn't exert obviously as much energy in a rehearsal. And he's like sitting on a stool with his water bottle and his coffee. He likes espresso more than anything. And he's just sometimes he'll like walk over and sit on your monitor and we'll just kind of like sit there and sing. But then when you see him coming out, like even just walking up to the stage seconds before, he's just kind of sitting there. And as soon as the music starts, he just runs out and it's over after that, you know? And it's just crazy to see those two personas existing in one man. Like, yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, like to see when he walked backstage and collapsed into the arms of the roadies to carrying him back because he had just given everything out there.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I actually got really scared when we played here in Miami for 3 points last year. Because
He went down.
he fell off the stage,
Yeah.
not off the stage, but just kind of tripped over a cable and fell behind one of the monitors on the stage, and people had to come and help him up, but he didn't even skip a beat or anything. He just kept singing the song and just kept the show going and was super high energy the whole time. And then the second I see him walking out down the stairs to get off the stage, he had, you know, his manager on one side and the tour manager on the other side kind of holding him and helping him down. And I just see him trip a couple times and I got so scared and I was like really worried for him. But dude, that guy does Tai Chi every morning. Like he keeps himself really fit and like, yeah, he might be slowing down, but he's honestly in such great shape that I feel like he's definitely still has a few more in him. Like,
Well, because like I think it's the original lead singer of Snapcase. The story is he tripped and fell on stage playing just like, not a big festival type thing, just a normal show, and hit a monitor and it punctured a lung. Like there's just and I think that's the story. Maybe I'm conflating two stories, but yeah. So like there's just hazards that happen to anyone, let alone someone who's been doing it for half a century.
Yeah.
I was standing there. I saw that fall, and there were a few of our friends there, and it was like a gasp. We were like, "Oh, like fuck, is
Yeah.
this it?" Like, yeah, it was scary as an observer.
Yeah. I mean, it's just scary in general too. Like my dad, he listens to this. He loves this guy called Sergio Denis. It's just nothing to do with punk at all, but it's just like one of his favorite musicians. And unfortunately, he fell off the stage during a performance and died. Like that's how he died, dude. And I don't know. When I think about it, it's like, damn, that's really sad and super tragic. But also, if I was a musician, like that was my whole life, and I died falling off a stage, that's kind of how I want to go.
I always think about what is it, Tammy Terrell? Didn't she like have a stroke on stage, and like that's how she went?
Wow. I know.
Yeah.
Not that she died, obviously, but Patti Smith, I think that kind of derailed her career, falling off the stage and breaking her neck when she was just kind of breaking out.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're right. To die. I don't know. It feels like I feel like there would be like a nobility in it, but then you think about like your corpse on stage, your bowels releasing, everyone's in the show,
Or if
like
you're Gigi Allen, people taking photos with your corpse.
Oh
like,
God.
yeah. Even Gigi couldn't do it on stage. Like
Right, yeah.
Gigi didn't even, he had to do it in a hotel room. It's getting really morbid. I don't go down this path and trace this kind of journey to it. But this has been awesome, and I could talk to you guys forever. And if you can talk for a little bit more, I'd love to talk to you a little bit longer.
I mean, we got a little bit of time.
We're chilling. Yeah.
It's interesting playing like shows like that, like the bigger shows, and then going back and playing like your own shows and just sort of like
God.
the reality
Yes.
checks that exist and the ego whiplash that kind of happens.
It's like an existential crisis that I go through every time like it happens. The first time it happened, I was honestly not prepared because the first time we played with Iggy was for a small private event. So it was about 350 people, which we're used to that. Like,
Yeah, but some of the people were like Chloe Sevigny, Jared Leto,
whatever.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
I couldn't see faces
No,
while on stage.
we didn't know until after the fact.
Yeah,
We weren't like, oh my God, Leonardo DiCaprio is watching us,
But like the first time that I played with Iggy for like his band and an actual like big festival show, I was not expecting the audience. And then like later that night they were like, oh yeah, there were 10,000 people in attendance, and I was just like, holy shit, I can't believe I just played in front of 10,000 people. I mean, I think what kind of helps me not get so nervous is reminding myself that they're not there for me, they're there for Iggy. So I can be kind of like hiding behind the guitar a little bit. But it is a crazy kind of reality check to go from, playing in front of 10,000, 40,000 people to then playing for 300 people.
If we're lucky.
If we're lucky, it is kind of a what did you call it? An ego
Whiplash.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I've had to talk about it in therapy a lot.
Yeah, because it's, and that's what I think the estimated by piece by people that aren't involved in music or making music in sort of like, not even as a living, I mean, but just even like in some sort of like quote unquote professional way, is that outside of the physical toll of playing and not sleeping, it's that kind of like constant ego, ping ponging that happens where you're just kind of like building up to the show. Is the show going to be good? Carrying that weight all day. If the show's great, trying to wind down from that so you can prepare for the next day. If the show's not great, having to get over that so you can get ready for the next day. I find that way more exhausting than anything else involved with touring.
It can be.
Yeah.
Especially when you're doing like stuff that's a little more DIY or smaller or whatever, because there's a lot of variables that you're not in control of, and that can affect a show for better or worse. And you just, you kind of don't know what you're walking into.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I think I've kind of tried to remind or tell myself, it doesn't matter if there's 5 people here tonight or if we're playing to an empty room or if, there's more people, great. I think if we put on an exemplary performance and give it our absolute all, the people that are there are going to hear it and experience it and be like, holy shit, this is awesome. They might buy merch and they might, go back home and tell their friends, like, I just saw this really awesome band, Las Nubes, perform, and y'all should check them out. And then the next time we go, there might be more people.
I mean, it happened 3 weeks ago. We played to 12 people.
Yeah.
And everyone in those 12 people ended up buying some merch. And like a couple of people were like, wait, what's the name of your band? What is that? Cool. Like it wasn't even people there to see us. And I was like, all right, not a lot of people came, but the people who came were super into it. So there you go.
Well, it's also like the thing you're providing for people too. Not to overstate the value, but like at the same time, people have terrible days, terrible experiences. Going to this concert and experiencing that music, even if they're just one of the handful of people there, is going to be like a high point for them. And it's like, as much as it's a high for us performing on the stage, like it also does serve a purpose for the people that it matters to. And yeah, as much as I find, I've definitely recently done some shows that 12 people vibes, and it's like, it's hard to find that place to be in. Like that's why I think like you go to see these big bands, so many of these big bands, they just get into like a routine where they're doing the same set every night. Obviously not Iggy, but like a lot of these stadium groups where it's almost like a Broadway show where you can kind of like just retreat into it. But DIY bands, we're living it present every single second, good or bad.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something that Rob Elba's like old school South Florida punk. He was in the Holy Terrors, and he lives now in LA. But he said something one night that kind of stuck with me, where it's just like, there's so many people, not only in this room right now, but just in general, who wish they could be doing what you're doing. And he was talking about like playing at Churchill's on a Wednesday night. And I've always sort of thought about that. And then I ended up reading one of Kim Gordon's like collection of like art essays that my partner had gotten me, and she had a very similar sentiment in that book as well. And it's like that whole idea just kind of sticks with me, and I try and that really grounds me with a lot of things. Like if it's like, oh, a bad set or people don't show up or this or that, and it's like, we get this opportunity and this privilege to do this thing that so many people wish they could do or might not ever get to do. And that's just amazing. And I try to remember to be grateful for that every time we play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like being in a band on like the DIY level is like having a machine that runs on gratitude and it just chews up all your gratitude at every turn. You got to constantly keep feeding it and remembering, oh yeah, I could be doing anything else right now, but I get to be here doing this. One of the craziest stories I've ever heard on this podcast is Dave from Sum 41, when he was on the show, told a story about when they were recording their song with Iggy, that he ordered and ate by himself a whole chocolate cake. And, and when Dave asked him how he does it and not gain weight, he's like, I do some deep breathing. And I'm just wondering, have you ever seen Iggy house a chocolate cake?
No, never. I don't think I've ever seen him eat either.
We have seen him with a shirt on.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's weird enough.
Yeah. No, I don't think I've ever seen him eat, period.
I saw him eat once, but it wasn't like in a show context. He got some award from like the French government, and me and Lolo, who runs Sweat Records, he invited us. And I was like, okay, this is funny. Like, so we went to like the French consulate in Coconut Grove and watched Iggy get this award. And it was just like us and his wife and like a couple other people. And there were light bites. I saw him munch on something. He drank a little Prosecco. So
he told me that when we played with him that he doesn't eat all day before a show. And then they get a restaurant to stay open and he goes and eats afterwards. But I don't know.
Nice.
I don't know if he was just feeding me with more legends that I could spread around like this.
I mean, that might be true, honestly. Like he dips, dude. After
he's gone.
The second he drops the mic, he walks off the stage, and the SUV is backed up waiting for him, and they just drive off. He goes, you know.
And then I sweep the green room.
Oh yeah, and then we take all the snacks.
Oh, cool. All of this is still sealed. How much cheese can I fit in my pockets?
Yeah, there's someone else who told a story where he like was out with them, and at a certain point, he's like, like drugs started coming out or some booze started coming out, and he was like, I gotta go, and just was like, I'm not gonna be around for this part.
Oh wow.
But once again, it's someone who's, and you've obviously, it's a friend of yours, you guys know him, but this is like sort of the legends, in a pre-internet world, especially, that you just kind of wind up building around these people, and sometimes it's more fun to just print the legend, I guess.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, this has been legendary, and together or separate, you ever want to come back on this show, you are both always welcome.
We'd love to.
All
Thank
right.
you
And
so much.
We're gonna be in Toronto in October.
Oh, I'm well, depending on when you're here, you should come over to the house, and I'll cook you dinner with the kids.
Yeah, we'll reach out. We're gonna all those tour dates will be announced soon, but yeah, we'll reach out and let you know when we're gonna be there, because we're doing a Toronto date on in our October tour
with Davila
with Davila
666.
666. We're doing a package tour. Yeah.
Yay!